adult woman leaves a strong impression on a 12-year-old boy. Let's begin with our protagonist, Renato Amoroso, a 12-year-old Italian boy, enjoying an incredible gift from his father. Despite being in the middle of a war, upon receiving his new bicycle, he doesn't hesitate to go for a ride, which allows him to join a group of friends because he finally had a bike just like theirs. At that moment, they all stop as they see a woman named Molina approaching, leaving everyone amazed, especially Renato. Although the other boys see her pass by every day, our protagonist feels something different inside and can't take his eyes off her. Then, he decides to follow the others as they all ride their bikes ahead with the intention of seeing the woman a bit more. The next day, we discover that Molina turns out to be the daughter of his teacher. From that moment on, Renato can't stop thinking about her. This is why he keeps meeting with his new friends, who never miss a chance to boast about their masculine traits at every moment. One of them shares that he once skipped school to visit Molina's house, and the woman asked him to buy some cigarettes while wearing a very revealing outfit. But unfortunately, nothing else happened with her, and now he regrets not doing something about it. Thinking about this story, Renato decides to skip his next class to do the same and approach Molina's house. There, we see her come out to ask him for a favor, to buy her some cigarettes. By accident, the woman drops the coins on the ground, and when the boy bends down to pick them up, he can see every inch of her legs. But all of this turns out to be just part of Renato's fantasy, and in reality, we see him return home, where he receives a beating from his father, who discovered that he had skipped school that day. That same night, Renato decides to sneak out again to repeat his adventure, this time hiding in the darkness, camouflaging himself behind a large tree, managing to observe the inside of Molina's house through a hole in her window. Thus, we can see the beautiful woman in her nightwear, suffering from loneliness as her husband is away fighting in the war. Despite the passing days, we notice that Molina is the sensation among all the men in town, as each of them talks about how beautiful she is. This keeps our protagonist obsessed with her, and for this reason, he continues to visit her more frequently. This time, he observes her through a small telescope while imagining some sensual situations. Another night, he accidentally sees one of her breasts and also witnesses her dancing alone while holding a photo of her husband because she truly missed him. Without wasting any more time, Renato, he goes to the music store to buy a record with the same song he had heard and doesn't hesitate to play it in his room while looking at paintings of naked women, fantasizing about the beautiful Molina. During another bike ride, the boy decides to separate from his group to follow the woman into the city, where all the men continue to be stunned by her beauty as she walked. The woman only pays attention to Lieutenant Katie, who seems to catch her interest, but she continues on and arrives at an apartment, trying to enter quickly, while our protagonist witnesses her every move. On another day, while Renato is fixing his bicycle, he meets her again by chance. This time, we realize that Molina also draws the attention of all the women, who waste no time in criticizing her. They accused her of loving the easy life. This time, the boy decides to gather the courage to walk next to the woman, but unfortunately, he fails to catch her attention. Afterward, he follows her to the same apartment as before, and his curiosity leads him to climb the walls, only to discover that it was just the house of his teacher, Molina's father. The fantasies of our protagonist don't stop until one afternoon during a school exercise, when he learns that Molina's husband had died in the war. Because of this, he later takes part in a ceremony honoring the fallen, and after leaving, he decides to return to his teacher's apartment to sneak in. This time, he finds the woman crying uncontrollably over the death of her husband, and he doesn't hesitate to approach her to be by her side and help her. At that moment, he wakes up. It had all been a product of his imagination once again, as the honorary ceremony was still taking place. Later, we discover that the entire town starts to speak poorly of Molina, so, in revenge, our boy decides to start playing pranks around the city. During another secret visit, Renato steals an intimate garment from the woman to take it to his room. The problem is that the next morning his father discovers it and beats him once again. To make matters worse, his mother burns Molina's garment, and as punishment, they decide he won't be allowed to pull any more pranks. They lock him in his room. After spending 3 days without eating, his family starts to worry, and they decide he needs some fresh air. Without wasting time, Renato goes out again on his bike, heading to the house of his platonic love. This time, he notices that all the men in town are looking at the house with curiosity, because now that she was officially a widow, she was available to any of them. This makes him worry, as he fears someone else might win her heart, but unable to do anything else, he returns to school. That day, his teacher receives a mocking note that said his daughter had slept with all the men in town. Upon reading this, the old man leaves the classroom, and our protagonist starts a fight with a classmate who made the joke, defending Molina. When the boy returns to his platonic love's house to spy on her, he discovers that she is in a romantic situation with Lieutenant Caudale. Afterward, the man leaves, and in the street, he is confronted by a well-known dentist who accuses him of sleeping with his fiancée. Things get out of control within minutes when they start fighting, and suddenly, the dentist's wife arrives with the police to arrest him. But the situation continues the next day, as everyone starts talking about what happened. Because of this, Molina's father decides to leave the school because he feels ashamed of what his daughter had done. Additionally, people begin to speak of the dishonor of being involved with two men, and others think she should be taken to court for having a relationship with a married man. That same day, Molina discovers that her father has changed the locks on his house, so he doesn't have to see her again. So, the woman seeks help from lawyer Centorvi to defend her in court. Our protagonist manages to attend the trial and witnesses the moment when the judge questions Molina about her case. She denies being the dentist's fiancée, but admits he visited her once. The reason for his visit was to bring medications her father needed, so she never got involved with him. Additionally, she states that her relationship with Lieutenant Katie is irrelevant to the law, as both were single. But the judge informs her that the soldier was transferred to another country and left a written statement clarifying that his relationship with her was merely casual. This makes her feel truly upset, so her lawyer delivers an incredible speech, making it clear that Molina's only sin was being beautiful and envying others, leading to her being declared innocent. That night, Renato goes to spy on his neighbor again and sees Molina celebrating with a dance alongside her lawyer. The worst part is that when the woman tries to pay him for his services with money, the man rejects it because he wanted to sleep with her, and in this way, he forces her, with no way for our protagonist to defend her. As days go by, the boy begins to feel bad for her and can't stop thinking about the alluring woman. He even confuses his teacher with her on several occasions. Things get complicated when, one afternoon, he sees Molina receiving some food from an unknown man in exchange for sleeping with him. And right then, hundreds of planes start flying over the town. The war had reached them, and the city is bombarded. In no time, we see many places destroyed. One of them was Molina's father's building, who sadly loses his life. During the funeral, men line up to offer their condolences and give things to Molina. Afterwards, Renato witnesses the moment when Molina decides to cut her hair to give herself a new look, and he sees her bare breasts. At that moment, he hears someone else arrive. It turns out to be a soldier named Salvatore, with whom the woman sleeps in exchange for food. This breaks our protagonist's heart. The next day, Molina surprises everyone with a new hair color, catching everyone's attention as she walks by. This time, the woman sits in the central plaza to smoke a cigarette, and hundreds of men offer her a light. Soon after, Molina is seen walking beside a German soldier, with whom she seems to have a relationship. They were the enemies of everyone in the town. The woman had joined the opposing side. While watching her, Renato begins to imagine all the things he would do with them. This makes him feel so bad that he ends up fainting. Without wasting time, his mother takes him to the church for an exorcism, believing he is possessed, but his father knows the boy needs something else. So he takes him to a house of pleasure, where he pays a woman to sleep with him for the first time. Time passes, and when the Germans leave the town, we see everyone celebrating. Along with the American soldiers, the women decide to enter Molina's house and give her a beating for sleeping with the enemies and being seen as an easy girl. The beating is so brutal that Molina ends up completely wounded. Additionally, they maliciously cut her hair and spit on her, stripping her of her dignity in front of everyone. Ned tries to defend her, so the woman struggles to get up and flees before things get worse. Soon after, She decides to pack her bags and escape the town on the next train, trying not to be recognized, though our sad protagonist does recognize her. He watches her leave without being able to say goodbye. The most unexpected thing of all is that we then see none other than Molina's husband arrive, who had not died, only lost an arm, and was now back to reunite with his wife. Everyone watches in shock, and no one tells him what had happened. When the man reaches his old home, he is surprised to see many refugees there, but no sign of his wife. Renato decides to follow him as he asks the American soldiers for help. Later, he watches as some men beat him up, and young Renato helps him to his feet without uttering a word about what he knew regarding his wife. That's why he chooses to write him a letter, which magically lands right next to him. In the letter, he tells him that Molina was always loyal, as he is the only man she loves, and he gives him the exact train she boarded. The man, convinced, decides to go to that town to find her. Sometime later, things had improved for everyone. Our protagonist now has an official girlfriend and is strolling with his family through the plaza when suddenly everyone is left speechless by what they see. Molina had returned with her husband, walking through the same places as before, but now as the respectable woman she always was. Of course, this leaves everyone stunned, including Renato himself. That same afternoon, the beautiful woman goes to the market, surrounded by whispers from the people. There, she crosses paths with the women who had once beaten her, and now they greet her warmly, as if nothing had ever happened. Surprisingly, they start treating her kindly. After a long time, our protagonist begins following her from her house again. Along the way, he notices that Molina accidentally drops a few oranges, and he approaches to help her. Their hands touch briefly, and for the first time, he dares to speak to her, wishing her well. The woman looks at him for a few moments and nods. Then, our protagonist hops on his bike and pedals quickly, as if trying to escape from something. In his narration, he tells us that throughout his life, he had loved many women, but only one of them never left his mind. Molina,